Hi, and welcome to today's fireside chat on an introduction to Power Apps licensing. My name is Carla Doherty. I'm the principal Microsoft licensing consultant here at Version 1, and I'm joined on today's session by my colleague, William Nelson, once again. How are you doing today, William?
Very well, thanks, Carl. How are you?
Great. Yeah, good. Not too bad. So we are here today to talk about, what should I say, briefly talk about Power Apps, Power Apps licensing, right? So this is an interesting one and an ever-growing requirement that we see within a lot of organizations right now. So I guess for those who don't understand anything or haven't heard anything about Power Apps, you're unsure what it is. How could I sum it up? I guess you could say it's like a suite of apps, services, connectors, all of which, when you combine them together, allow you to rapidly develop custom business applications that, in effect, can connect to data stored within the Microsoft ecosystem, as well as third-party environments. And this is all made possible through this whole concept of no-code or low-code development, which can ultimately be done by both technical and non-technical stakeholders. And I guess what we often see those non-technical stakeholders be described as citizen developers. It's also worth calling out that Power Apps is a part of what Microsoft refer to as their Power Platform family of products, which in effect is like a marketing term used to describe a host of associated technologies, things like Power BI, Power Automate, Power Pages, Power Virtual Agents, and services along the lines of Dataverse, for example. So pretty much anything with a power in it is is a part of the Power Platform. So what's kind of interesting here, why we're publishing content around Power Apps, is that, like, I think since its launch in 2015, there's been a variety of changes to the way in which this product has been licensed. So it's really important that if you're a long-term user of Power Apps, or that you're starting out to look at using Power Apps for the first time, you may want to look in the weeds on this one just to make sure you fully understand exactly how this product is currently licensed by Microsoft. Because since 2015, there's been a range of tweaks associated with the product terms, and I think this is probably done in part by due to the fact, should I say, that we've seen a much broader adoption of this product since 2015 when it was originally launched. And I guess as a consequence of that, we're starting to see Microsoft implement changes into the product terms as they get to grips in terms of how organizations are using this product and at what scale they're using the product. So an interesting topic.
Yeah. With all these changes since 2015, I mean, it is it can be somewhat confusing in terms of what license is right and which
Yeah.
license to apply. I mean, what do you see as the main sort of landscape around the
Yeah.
licensing for Power Apps in itself?
Yeah, I think, like, there's a bit of confusion out there, I think, when it comes to, is this free or do I have to pay for it? So I think, it's really important that you take the time to understand what's, I use the word free, but it's not really free. It's license included, um, versus paid. So when we talk about license included, sometimes this is where companies think when they hear Power Apps, they'll say, I get that already, right? I have an Office 365 license or a Microsoft 365 user subscription for all of my users, or I've got Dynamics 365 user subscriptions in the estate. When you look into the portal, you'll see that there's a quantity of Power Apps licenses available to you. Um, so it's really important that organizations understand how the license included Power Apps that you get with Office 365 and Dynamics 365 are slightly different to those that you would pay for a license for. But I think when we look at it in that context, anytime where we see a scenario where there's a license included option that provides a pathway to a paid licensing model, there's always going to be certain constraints in there that may hinder some organizations. Um, and that may create bottlenecks that might necessitate the need to look at stepping up to a paid version of the product. And that could potentially result in some unforeseen licensing costs for some organizations that haven't fully understand exactly, what it is they need to license Power Apps relative to the needs of their organizations. So their organization, should I say. So, but like, what are the license included options? So as I mentioned, there's an option there to have Power Apps included with Office 365. The rights that you get are limited, and they allow licensed users to, say, customize and extend Office 365 for productivity scenarios, or to deliver a comprehensive low-code extensibility platform for Microsoft Teams. Somewhat similar with Dynamics. There's limited Power Apps use rights included there, as we've said. But the key things to remember here is it's within the same environment as the licensed Dynamics 365 application or applications, to allow users to customize and extend Microsoft 365 Dynamics applications. The use of Power Apps capabilities included again with Dynamics 365 can only be used within the context of the licensed Dynamics 365 application. So there's quite a lot to take in there, right? And that's the terminology that's used within the licensing brief for Power Platform, which is a great starting point to get to grips on all the various different key licensing terminology around Power Platform. But what does that mean in layman's language? In effect, with Office 365, with Dynamics, those license included options, you really are only able to use the Power Apps included with those licenses that are included with those subscriptions within that Microsoft wall garden. So essentially, when you start to step outside that wall garden and look at leveraging other data sources, for example, that's then when you start to see a need to license users on a on a more commercial basis. So you're at the coalface, William, helping customers fulfill these licenses. Very quickly, like what are the kind of the key licensing options that exist then if you need to take that step out into the paid world?
So you've described the included licenses or included entitlement. The standalone licenses, as they're referred to, is really for general purpose, to provide that full Power Apps capability on a standalone basis. So, and that's broken down into, I suppose, two key areas, which is per user and per application or per app. So you can license a user on a per user basis each month, and that allows them to run and run unlimited custom applications based on the full power behind Power Apps, the full capabilities. So there's no restrictions on that front. The per app is literally as it says, so you can access and run one custom application or website per month, and that's all the entitlement that you get. So that's quite constrained on a single application basis for a user. There's also, they've introduced more recently the per app pay-as-you-go plan, which sort of sits outside the sort of traditional per user per month subscription, and it is literally enables customers to really sort of post-pay for active users who access a single application per month within a single portal or environment, and that it means that you could have, for example, 100 users using it one month and one user using it the next month, and you'd pay for those users that have actually sort of surfaced that app within their day-to-day job. So it can scale up, scale down, and you just pay for what you use, which definitely needs metrics and some sort of analytics and monitoring to make sure that the price point or the cost of that service isn't then extending beyond what it would cost to assign a license to each user on a monthly basis. But there's also other considerations as well, and it's sort of, we'll be covering this in other fireside chats, but that's the Power Pages as well as Power Automate. So Power Pages is the traditional sort of portal. So you build an app, you want to externally face it to outside users, whether that's anonymous or authenticated. That's a whole different sort of charging subset of Power Platform. And then similarly with Power Automate, if you're connecting to other data sources, if you're what we call premium connectors. So if it's connecting into something that's deemed a premium product, then there's going to be connection charges or flow charges for Power Automate. So it's other things that need to be considered within the Power Platform. So it is getting more and more complex as people can do more, or have the capabilities to do more. Then it really needs to be closely monitored in that respect. But I suppose it's a tricky one. It's complex and it's ever evolving.
Yeah, that it is. And also, I guess it's probably things to consider there around, Dataverse capacity fees. That
Absolutely.
is another service that may lean on your Dataverse requirements. I know we're going to touch on the portal side of things on a later fireside chat, or perhaps pages, or Power Pages, should I say. Then there's licensing dependency there potentially around external identities. And also, I think another thing to probably take into account when looking at Power Apps is this, the concept of multiplexing, right? So depending on looking, it's really important that you take time to understand what data sources are you using for Power Apps, because there is a potential risk, and this risk could extend, not just within the world of Microsoft. It could extend to other third-party products depending on the vendor's licensing terms. If you're exposing or surfacing data through a Power App that has an underlying licensing requirement, that may remain hidden until such time that you may be audited or something along those lines. So, for example, with SQL Server, if you're exposing data through a Power App in SQL Server, that might have been a SQL Server that you've just licensed on a server plus cal basis. Now, all of a sudden, you've exposed this data to everyone in your organization, and it's got thousands of users. That SQL Server should have been then licensed on a per core basis, and you times that in a number of situations, scenarios, then you potentially could have some underlying licensing dependencies there that you haven't fully kind of thought through, and that could go to that could also be said for other software vendors who may have limitations around who and where that data can be accessed. So worth kind of having a good look under the bonnet during that kind of pre-planning phase or pre-deployment phase, just to kind of iron out where some of those licensing dependencies might exist within your organization, in case they have a significant knock-on cost later down the line. So I think, like, you made some really good points there around the different types of models that are there, be it per app. We're talking about commercial, the paid versions of Power Apps, per app licensing, per app on a pay-as-you-go basis, per user, and then we've got Power Pages, which is a public facing offering for portals. So this kind of speaks to the whole concept of making sure that you've gone through some form of a profiling exercise within your organization before you start to make a commitment to Power Apps. So I think one of the things that I would say is that don't take the approach where you're kind of jumping in at the deep end and ticking a box with everybody having a per app, or sorry, should I say a per user plan. If starting out, I think there's a great opportunity here with the variety of different licensing metrics that are in place to allow you to somewhat dabble and scale before you start to make a much more larger financial commitment to licenses that could potentially turn into shelfware fairly quickly if you don't have that app development trajectory that you thought you were going to have in the early stages of rolling out Power Apps.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean, there is a lot to take in, and this is where we come in and look on at a case-by-case basis for each customers. But I mean, just so I suppose, in summary, what would be the key things to consider when looking at Power Apps, specifically and broadly, more the Power Platform licensing models?
Yeah, so I think probably making sure that the most suitable licenses are aligned to the functional needs of users and the business. I think it's really important that organizations take stock of the entitlement that they might already have in place. I have actually seen some scenarios where people have gone off and bought paid versions of Power Apps, and they've actually found out later that actually we should have just used the license included options as opposed to making that upfront investment on net new licenses. But I think I always kind of recommend, and this probably speaks to organizations who are using Power Apps right now, as well as those who are starting to plan for the use of Power Apps. But having some form of a discovery and design process that incorporates the services of a licensing professional will help identify some of those nuances and help feed into those projected costs to help you understand what your total investment should be in Power Apps licensing. So there's quite a lot to consider. Within the version 1 SAM practice, we're actively working with our customers, other customers out there, to help them understand the nuances around Power Apps licensing. So if you have any questions off the back of today's session, this is just a brief introduction to Power Apps licensing. Please feel free to reach out to the software asset management practice here at version 1. We'd be delighted to handle any questions that you may have. Also, look out for, we've produced a series of blogs around the whole area of the Power Platform. So there's some quite useful content just published there in the last couple of weeks, as of January 2023, on the topic of the Power Platform. So some useful insights on Power BI and some tips and tricks around managing costs associated with the Power Platform itself, along with some other upcoming content that we'll be pushing out in the coming weeks. So thanks again, William. Some useful insights there in this short video. If anyone has any questions, check out the associated blog. And one other thing I'd encourage you to do is if you're struggling to get your head around licensing for Power Platform in general, check out the licensing guide from Microsoft. I'll include a link for it in the blog associated with this fireside chat on my Medium account. So until the next fireside chat, thanks again for taking the time to listen to us today. Take care.